Give me your name and your position here.
Sure. My name is Andy Riley. I am at the University of Hawaii, Manoa. I'm a professor and curator of the Historic Fashion Collection. I have a PhD in clothing and textiles, and my area of specialty is the social psychology of clothing, or why people wear what they wear.
Could you talk a little bit about that? That's something I've never thought of in my life.
Sure, yes, I definitely can do that. So I examine cultural reasons and social reasons for why people wear what they wear. So a lot of our clothing in the Historic Fashion Collection includes reasons of memory, status, ethnicity, what it was like living on the plantations, and how clothing had to be adapted for that purpose. Today, it's a lot about fashion and what draws people to particular trends, how it identifies them or the aesthetics that they are looking to achieve. Here you go, Louise. This is an early Hawaiian shirt that was made here on the islands, and it comes from 1937. We have two of these. It was made out of a cotton. It includes the coconut buttons that you see here. But the really distinctive part of this is if you notice what's on the print, what they printed on here, it looks like postcards or flyers advertising events that are here in Hawaii. And so it was a great tourist souvenir for people who were visiting here to take back to show what they had seen or what they had done. It's pretty much a visual postcard that you could wear. Hawaiian shirts early on were appealing to a lot of the visitors who came over. And so we have this early one from cotton, and then a lot of early ones were also made out of kimono fabric. Since there were a lot of Japanese immigrants who came here, they would repurpose kimono fabric that they may have had, or kimonos. This particular one, the fabric comes from a juban, which is an undergarment that is worn with a kimono. It's brightly colored, and you wouldn't necessarily see this out in public because it would be worn under layers of kimono. But the person who made this, and it's made in Hawaii, we don't know who made it or what the purpose was, but they took the fabric from the juban and then repurposed it as an aloha shirt. And so a lot of these are made out of silk, what we see here.
So this one is silk?
This one is silk, and I just think it's interesting that they were basically using fabric that was used for underwear as outerwear, and so that was, permissible here because silk was highly valuable.
Can you tell me if there's a strict definition of aloha shirt?
Oh, that's a very good question. So there's two versions of it. There's the Hawaiian shirt and the aloha shirt. The Hawaiian shirt is something that is brightly colored, usually floral, and that idea has been disseminated around the world for a lot of people. So you can even go to Alaska and find versions of it that are made in Alaska or Jamaica. The term aloha shirt was coined in the 30s here, and Ellery Chun was the person who trademarked the term. And so he had exclusive use to it until the trademark expired. So that was aloha shirt with a capital A. After it expired, anybody could use that term, aloha shirt, so it's little a for aloha shirt. Today, everybody uses it, but I like to think of an aloha shirt as something that is made in Hawaii and represents the culture that is here in Hawaii and has a history that is from here, as different from a Hawaiian shirt, which is brightly colored and tends to be could be used for a costume or could be used for other events as well.
So the tourists I see with brightly colored shirts with beer bottles on them are wearing Hawaiian shirts.
They could be classified as Hawaiian shirts because of the colors and a lot of things. And sometimes I don't know that you'll see residents or locals here wearing the same shirts. I never have. I did a study on how residents, Native Hawaiians, and locals use Hawaiian shirts and aloha shirts different from tourists. And there is definitely a clear difference. One of the differences were that in the 1960s, Hawaiian shirts were turned inside out, so the fabric was more muted, and that appealed to the local population, who typically wasn't wearing them at the time, because it was not as bright. as the other ones. People who move to Hawaii, usually haoles or white people move to Hawaii, they're used to seeing the brightly colored Hawaiian shirts that they see on TV or in Waikiki. But as they learn more about Hawaii and the culture, their tastes start to shift and they'll move towards the more locally appropriate style to show that they are familiar with the environment and familiar with local customs.
So I wanted to ask, this shirt you said is 1930s.
It's 1937, yes.
I had read that the first shirts were all made from kimonos, so that's not true.
Well, there's a lot of different stories. It's hard to figure out where the very first shirt came from. Okay. There are stories of shirts being made out of kimono, and those were in the 1930s, maybe even early 1920s. Eventually, and those were people who were just making them on their own, or they would go to a tailor. In Chinatown, there was a tailor who started making shirts, manufacturing them to sell to people. And he even wrote a book about how it was a ghost-written book about how Musashiya broke into the aloha shirt business. It's a title like that, I'm not sure the exact title. But it made his store in Chinatown a tourist destination, and people wanted to go there for a souvenir. So he started selling a lot, and then other tailors in the area were selling shirts that were either promoted as Hawaiian shirts or aloha shirts. Who created the very first one? It's hard to tell where the very first one came from. But like, this is a unique one because this one is from the 1940s, and you may notice that it looks thick. Yes. Because it's made out of upholstery fabric. And you see the label right here. It comes from Wong's Draperies, right?
That is great.
And I think they even have one in their window as well.
And it has pockets.
And it has pockets, which I love. Now, this wasn't comfortable to wear in Hawaii. People might take it back to wear on the mainland. But this idea of having bright florals came from the upholstery at the time, because it was really common to have sofas and draperies that had flowers and had tropical prints on them. And so that easily translated to lighter fabrics that people could wear. But yeah, this is an interesting history about Wong's Drapery Shop that is still in existence today, and I think it's a fun little nod to history. Palakas, as they're known today, are a type of shirt, and palaka can refer to the fabric itself that is a dense weave that's made with two different colors that create this check or plaid stripe pattern. It can also mean a type of shirt that you wear that has this type of print on it, or a dress that has this type of print on it. Palaka was very popular during the plantation era because it was protective of people who were working in the fields. And it also appealed to a lot of the Japanese workers because it reminded them, they say, of home, because it was the blue and white and reminded people of the indigo from Japan. This is what's known as a jack shirt. And so it was worn on the plantations. And this one was actually made in, where was this one? Yeah, this one was made in Japan by Union Supply Company. Arakawas would supply a lot of the clothing for the people who were working in the plantations, and he sold a lot of palaka. Blue and white and red and white are more common in the early days, and then we get a lot of more fashion colors.
So the local politicians who wear palaka are doing that to refer back to that history.
Yes, there was the 1980s, I believe it was 1980s or 90s, the Palaka Power Movement. And it was a lot of the second generation Japanese politicians who were referencing their history of where they had come from and using palaka as a political statement of, we are the workers who established and who came from working in the fields to now having power. And this one, it's palaka-ish. It really is more of a check, but it's manaheali'i. And what you can see on it is that what they did was they put the Hawaiian quilt pattern on top of it. So you're still getting that idea of palaka, but now you're layering it with native Hawaiian culture and the way that Hawaiian quilts developed here, which is unique from American-style patchwork quilts.
So it's two themes in one.
We see two themes in one here, yes.
And it's still crazy looking.
I know. It's a lot of fun, and I love the colors here. Now
this looks pretty recent.
This one is recent. This one is early 2000s, I believe. So this was a more recent version. And we see a lot of people buying and wearing Palaka today as a fashion statement, and you can get them in any color you could want, more than the red and original red and white and blue and white. And speaking of quilt patterns, during the Hawaiian Renaissance in the 1970s, we started to see that there were a lot of Native Hawaiian designers who started to express their own aesthetic through clothing. There had been a long period of, I believe, about 100 years where Hawaiian was banned. People were not allowed to practice their culture. And so once those were lifted in the 1970s, people were expressing themselves through music, through clothing, through food. So one of the designers that came out of this period was Alan Akina, and his expression was using Hawaiian women on his clothing. He was the artist who created the fabrics and the prints, so this is his own artwork that is then applied to fabrics. And what you can see here is we see Hawaiian women who are fanning themselves in the Victorian style of the kingdom days. So this was a new expression in fashion. And Mamo also was Mama was also using Hawaiian heritage as part of her designs, because what you see here is that she's using, again, the Hawaiian quilt patterns for the designs here. And so she was really known for having those quilt patterns and then printing them on the fabric, or having the fabric printed and then making her mu'u and other garments out of it. I do think that this one is really interesting, because if you notice the sleeves, she used the tuck here to make the sleeves just a little bit more slimmer at the wrist area and to get more of a puffiness at the top here. But we also see the Asian influence here with the collar and the red button and the red piping. So it's a good example of the different cultures that are important to the development of Hawaii as we know it today. So in the 1940s, we hear what are now called silkies. They were shirts that were made out of a kabe crepe. It was a rayon pattern that was used to make it. They're not made anymore out of the rayon fabric, that particular formula. So they're highly collectible and highly valuable. But they were great at absorbing the dye colors so that we get those rich colors that we would see in the kimonos. There was a legend that the formula was lost in a fire at DuPont, but that was just a legend. There was nothing to it. But it did help fuel the collector's market, as people were starting to think that these were so collectible that formula could never be used again. It's just they haven't made it. We have other fabrications, we have other textiles that we have now. So these are some of the silkies, and if you go to Bailey's Antiques on Kapahulu, he has all the shirts there, as well as the original silkies from the 40s that are going for thousands of dollars today. So look in your closets to see if you have anything in there. You might have a small fortune. And then today, I just want to talk about what we're seeing today.
Whoa.
So this is David Shepard. He is a local designer working today, and he uses Hawaii's nature as his inspiration. He creates the artwork that is then transferred and applied to the fabric that he uses to make his clothing. They're made here in Hawaii. And his background is in botany. So he's very familiar with, and that's what his training is, so he's very familiar with the plants, the bugs, the insects that are here, and he uses that as inspiration. So this is a recent donation that he donated, but it's really starting to now show much more of the authenticity of what Hawaii's nature is. All right, so in our mu'u collection, in our dress collection, this one is from the 1920s, we believe. And you can see that it has the classic design of the mu'u that is, you have a yoke at the top and then with the fabric falling down on it. But if you look carefully at the detail, the person here did a lot of nice work creating an interesting design with ruffles and pleating here.
That's really amazing.
But this is, a very nice, stylish mu'u. The mu'u actually started as a slip. It was an undergarment for the holoku. But by the time we get to the 1930s and 40s, women are wearing it in their own right because it's so hot here, 2 layers of fabric here. In the 1960s, we have this other type of interesting dress that we have here. And I think this one is unique because it does have shells that were sewn onto it. So you definitely get that, I don't know, that tropical feel, or people were using more natural materials in the 1960s to create their patterns on it. Let me see who this is, if this has a label in it. No, I don't believe this one has a label in it. So it might have been made by somebody who was in a class, or might be at a school making it, or there was a lot of home sewing in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And so this one likely was made by someone who had a design of what they wanted to include, including the little shells here.
So my question is more about when were fabrics printed here?
Oh, fabrics were printed here from the early days, from 30s, 40s, 50s. Alfred Shaheen, who was one of the early designers and was making aloha wear and making other clothes, he would he'd actually develop his own printing machines from random parts that he had, and I think he used it throughout the day, and then it would break down, and every morning he'd have to recreate the machine and start over again. We've been printing fabric here since then, maybe even before then, up until, there's still fabric printing here, but in the 1990s, it became cheaper to go overseas. So we see a lot of manufacturers who are having their designs made overseas, or getting the fabric overseas and then doing the manufacturing here.
So aloha everyone, my name is Terry Lee Bixby. I am the curatorial assistant here at the Historic Fashion Collection, and this piece of paper is my work process. I write down the object number, and then I take measurements, meticulous as if a tailor were to take measurements of a piece of fabric for a garment. And I do this and also take what's called a condition report. So if there's any fabric loss, if there's any minimal holes, or if a zipper pull is missing, I go ahead and write that down. And that way I can put it all into our inventory and system. And that is part of the ongoing digitization process that we have here at the Historic Fashion Collection, to digitize our Hawaii sub-collection so that we can make it publicly available for researchers, for community members, for anyone who would like to access it. So there's a lot of the back end that has to happen first, in terms of taking all these measurements, inputting them into our database, and then uploading those to the public platform. In addition though, which is a really fun part of my job, I get to take photos of all of these lovely collections. So this right here is the Aloha Airlines uniform collection. And I pulled out a few pieces because, well, I'm biased, they're my favorites, and I think they represent some of the best pieces in the collection. So these are from the 1969 Fun Birds uniforms from Aloha Airlines. So I think a lot of folks at home, if you were around during the period, or if you love vintage wear, you'll notice these designs are very 1960s. They're very fun, very timeless, classic, and the beautiful print of the marigold plumerias really ties everything in together. And then we have, in 1983, the Waves collection. So this is a very beautiful print of a sweeping design. It has elements of Hawaiian and Asian print and design, and so we can see that it not only helps the airline to align with its home base in Hawaii, but it also helps to bring a fun element to the workers. If you want to follow our social media, we are Historic Fashion Collection on Instagram and Facebook. And we currently have a mini exhibition downstairs, actually. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the first section of our current exhibition pop-up called Welina Manoa. It is here to welcome returning students or new students and staff and faculty back to campus. This is a 1960s Malihini dress, and it has different block stamping patterns across it, reflecting shells, reflecting fish, and then there is a pocket that has embroidered netting on it and other natural elements. So the second piece in the display case is an aloha shirt with UH Manoa fabric, UH Manoa prints on it. It has the school seal. It also has some of the vintage symbols and signs, and it also has an outrigger canoe. So this beautiful dress right here is another example of community efforts in sustainability and also in preserving native Hawaiian trees and the flora and fauna. Okay, so this is a 1960s Tory Richards romper. So this romper has beautiful green and white floral elements to it. It has a quilted fabric, and because of its nature as a romper, sleeveless with a little skirt design, it's a wonderful spring, summertime look for people in the community. And of course, 1960s fashion is always in vogue. We move on to this, I guess, due to the colors but also due to the native flora and fauna and the native elements. You see there's some geometric prints and patterns. Those are reflective of different tapa, or in a Hawaiian context, kapa, which is bark cloth. And bark cloth would usually have different geometric prints on it, and so I would categorize this as an aloha shirt. And it also has the hibiscus, which is a native flower. So moving on, we have another 1970s aloha shirt, and this is by Pennies, and it definitely invokes the spirit of local Hawaiian culture, and we thought it was a beautiful addition to this collection that highlights both the UH Manoa colors, a callback and a reference to different community values. This piece is an aloha shirt done and designed by Sig Zane, who is one of the most prominent Hawaii-based designers, and he is based out of Hilo, Hawaii. And this shirt from the 90s features the tea leaf. And the tea leaf in Hawaiian culture is a very special plant. It's used to make lei, it's used for other cultural practices, and it has a special significance in the community.